Hi, and welcome to Creepy Crime Story, where the darkest truths aren't imagined, they're real. When a father kicks down his daughter's door, it's never because something feels right. August 29th, 2021, Richmond, Texas. Mid-afternoon sun, still blistering. The streets inside Cortland Apartments were quiet, too quiet for a Sunday. Janae Gagne hadn't posted in 36 hours. For most people, that means nothing. For someone with 2.6 million Instagram followers, it's a red flag. Her father noticed. Her fans noticed. And by the time he drove across town to check on her, it wasn't curiosity anymore. It was instinct. Mark Gagne had called her phone 12 times. No answer. Her mother had tried as well. Her location still pinged at the same apartment complex she'd been living in for months. Secure, gated, high-end. A place meant to keep threats out. No one answered the buzzer. Her car was parked. The blinds were drawn. No noise inside. He tried her door. Locked. He knocked. Jean called out. Nothing. So he backed up and put his full weight through the front door. Inside, it was cold. Still. Not messy. Not loud. Just wrong. At the base of the stairs lay Janny. No pulse. No motion. Not asleep. Not alive. He screamed. Ran upstairs. That's when he saw the second body. A man. Unknown. Face bloodied, lying in the bed upstairs with a blade beside him, breathing faint, barely alive. He called 911. When officers arrived, the scene was sealed within minutes. What they found triggered a procedural lockdown. 2 bodies in one unit, one confirmed dead, the other unconscious and bleeding. A female victim, a male suspect. No signs of forced entry, no signs of a fight, no signs of struggle at all. Initial assumption, murder-suicide, intimate partner violence, case closed, but there was a problem. No one knew who the man was. And more importantly, no one, not family, not friends, not Janny's management, could connect him to her. That was the first anomaly. Janae Gagne, known online as Mercedes Moore, was 33, independent, private. Despite her status as an influencer and model with nearly 3 million followers, she kept her circle tight. Her father was confident. She wasn't seeing anyone. She wasn't dating. No recent boyfriends, no relationship drama. The apartment door hadn't been pried open. There were no broken windows, no kicked-in locks. She wasn't dragged inside, no defensive wounds, no signs of any physical confrontation, but she was dead. And a stranger, male, around mid-30s, no ID, no wallet, was found in her bed. We don't get many scenes like this. A clean apartment, a dead woman, and a dying man no one recognizes. But it happens. What doesn't happen is no connection at all. Initial field report, Fort Bend, PD. Crime scene unit noted very specific things. A phone on the coffee table, unlocked, untouched. 2 empty glasses in the kitchen sink. A slightly scuffed wall near the stair railing. On the bathroom mirror upstairs, red writing, not lipstick, marker, sloppy, erratic, angry. No clear message, just fragments. I tried everything. I'm sorry. No one knew. She should have answered me. Psychotic scrawl or deliberate misdirection. Either way, it didn't fit a clean domestic profile. Fingerprints were lifted off the faucet, railing, and inside the fridge. The man's prints matched only one identity, Kevin Alexander Accordo, a 34-year-old from Florida. No criminal record, no ties to Texas, no known history with Janae. Digital forensics would confirm what the scene already suggested. He shouldn't have been there. There were no defensive wounds on Janae's hands or arms. Cause of death, determined later, would be manual strangulation and blunt force trauma to the head. She didn't die instantly, but she didn't suffer long either. The man upstairs, Kevin, died hours after her. He had self-inflicted stab wounds, mostly to his upper chest and neck. One hand was sliced across the palm, suggesting hesitation before the final blows. His blood was everywhere. But there were no signs he had moved after harming himself. One line from the medical examiner's early notes stood out. He lingered, long enough to be aware of what he'd done, and to write something down. In his backpack, authorities found a notebook, spiral-bound 70 pages, almost all filled. Most pages addressed to Mercedes, not Janae. Mercedes. Some entries read like romantic pleas, others like threats. One page simply repeated, "You should have talked to me," over and over again. Another read, "No one will take you from me again." The pages were dated sporadically. Some were recent, days before, others stretched back weeks. No return address, no receipts. Just a man who had crossed state lines with a notebook, a knife, and a fixation. Back at Fort Bend PD, the case took an immediate turn. It was no longer being treated as an isolated domestic dispute. There was no domestic, no relationship, no romance, just obsession. But that opened a more pressing question. How did he find her? Janae never publicly posted her exact location. She never tagged her apartment complex. She blurred street signs in her content. Her Instagram showed vague interior shots, white walls, beige counters, but nothing that could pinpoint where she lived. Someone like Kevin would need to either know someone on the inside or follow her, quietly, patiently, for days, maybe longer. By the time media caught wind of the story, the headlines were predictable. Influencer found dead in Texas murder-suicide. Beauty and tragedy. Instagram model killed in her own home. Social media fame turns fatal. But they didn't know the rest. Not yet. There were no witnesses, no cameras in the hallway, no signs of shouting. Neighbors said they heard nothing. Dogs didn't bark, no alarms tripped, just a locked apartment, a cold body, and a man who shouldn't have been there. There was no identification on the body, no license, no credit cards, no phone, just a name from a fingerprint match. Kevin Alexander Accordo, male, 34, resident of Tampa, Florida. A stranger, by every metric. Not listed in her contacts. No shared friends. No interaction recorded on public social media. Janae's inner circle confirmed. No one had ever heard of him. But a stranger doesn't end up dead in someone's bedroom by accident. Kevin had no criminal history. No warrants. No restraining orders. No known ties to Texas. His only official trace was a registered address in Hillsborough County, Florida. Lived alone. Freelance labor work. Sporadic income. The vehicle he used to travel, a rented Dodge Charger, was located by police one street over, parked in an unassigned spot, unwashed and unlocked. Inside were the following items: a partially filled gas can, an iPhone, powered off, 3 energy drink cans, an open spiral-bound notebook, zip ties, a kitchen knife with dried blood on the sheath. The name on the rental agreement matched the print ID, Kevin Accordo, but the notebook made it clear. He didn't travel for leisure. The pages were fixated on Janae Gagne. She wasn't named Janae. Every reference was to Mercedes. Digital forensics from the recovered phone revealed geolocation breadcrumbs from the previous 5 days. He had driven cross-state, stopping at Tallahassee, Baton Rouge, Houston suburbs. Finally, Richmond. From the time he entered Texas, his movements began to cluster around Cortland apartments. Mapping software revealed he had pulled into the same parking area 3 separate times before the day of the murder. He wasn't lost. He was circling. One log from the phone's Notes app, dated August 27th, contained the following: "I know where she is now. I waited long enough. She won't ignore me anymore." Investigators now shifted the lens. This wasn't a sudden outburst. It was premeditation. The man traveled 1,000 miles over 4 days, watched the property, and waited. The next question was obvious. How did he find her location? Janae never geotagged her address. She didn't share street names. Her Instagram posts were staged indoors. Even lifestyle stories gave little away. No mailbox photos, no visible complex signs, nothing useful on the surface. But Kevin didn't need much. He had tracked her down using metadata. Open-source data scraping tools on archived live streams had revealed time-stamped deliveries, background decor, and most critically, package labels briefly shown on camera. A screen recording from months prior showed a delivery box on her kitchen counter, addressed clearly, Cortland Apartments, Richmond, TX. It wasn't high-tech, it was persistent. One detail stood out in the crime analyst's report. He wasn't guessing. He wasn't hoping. He was verifying. Kevin had used Google Street View to examine the apartment complex remotely. Surveillance footage confirmed he arrived at the complex's gated entry just before dawn on August 28th. He tailgated another vehicle during entry, legal but untraceable. No visitor log entry, no doorbell camera facing the exterior. From that point, no one saw him again until officers found his body. The working theory was that he gained access to Janae's unit either by watching her enter or waiting nearby long enough to slip in. But the door was locked from the inside and there were no pry marks. Either she let him in, or he was already inside before she arrived. The latter became more plausible when her smart lock history showed no digital activity between 8:12 p.m. on the 27th and 3:42 p.m. on the 29th, when her father forced entry. That 43-hour window was now central to reconstructing what happened. One behavioral investigator later remarked, "People assume stalkers strike randomly, but this wasn't random. This was built over time." He thought of her as someone he knew, someone who owed him a response. Back at the scene, a forensic pathologist examined the condition of Kevin's body. Self-inflicted wounds showed hesitation, small, surface-level slices before deeper trauma. The angle and pattern confirmed he had enough strength post-mortem to stage his own position. No substances were found in his system. No alcohol, no sedatives, just adrenaline and obsession. There was no note left at the scene, nothing formal. But the notebook in his car acted as a written intent. It didn't say kill, it didn't say revenge. What it revealed was delusion, a constructed relationship in his mind, maintained by digital proximity. This wasn't a break-in. It was an infiltration of boundaries, psychological, emotional, and physical. What made this case so difficult wasn't just the horror of what happened. It was how little Janny could have done to stop it. She followed every precaution influencers are taught. She didn't tag locations. She didn't answer DMs. She kept her private life separate, and still it wasn't enough. Because the danger didn't come through a screen. It came through a door. The majority of Kevin Acorto's actions left no visible trace in the real world. No public threats, no confrontations, no phone calls. What he left behind was digital, a trail of clicks, searches, screenshots, and saved posts. A pattern of passive surveillance that built over time, invisible until it was too late to stop. He never contacted Janny directly in a way that flagged concern. There were no violent messages in her inbox, no blocked threats. The few interactions he initiated, DMs sent from anonymous accounts, went unread, filtered automatically into the message requests folder on Instagram. But Kevin didn't need a reply. He only needed visibility. The forensic team's first sweep of Kevin's digital footprint started with his phone. The contents were encrypted but retrievable. Nearly 82% of his device's storage, just under 48 gigabytes, was media content related to Janay. Hundreds of images, dozens of downloaded videos, screen recordings, clipped voiceovers from live streams. One folder stood out, labeled simply, "She's Real." It contained a timeline, unofficial, subjective, but detailed. Photos dated back to 2019. Most were screenshots from public posts. Others were captures from third-party reposts. Captions were annotated, often with notes like, "Same couch as last video," or "Different earrings than 7/21/20." It wasn't just fandom, it was documentation. Investigators confirmed Kevin had followed at least 6 accounts connected to Janny. 2 were her public profiles. 1 was a fan archive. 3 were bot-created, dummy accounts likely made by Kevin himself, all active in her comments section. These accounts didn't post. They watched, liked, replied to strangers who criticized her. Their activity suggested someone trying to control the online narrative surrounding her, even when she never acknowledged them. On TikTok, he favorited posts using soundtracks from her content. On Twitter, he followed accounts that tagged her. On YouTube, he left timestamped comments under interviews she never participated in, speculating about her personal life. The forensic audit of his search history showed thousands of related queries over 2 years. Many were benign, others were not. Does Mercedes Moore have a boyfriend? How to trace apartment from IG post? What influencers live in Richmond TX? How to get inside a gated complex? None of these were technically illegal, but in pattern, they created intent. What alarmed analysts wasn't the volume, it was the organization. Kevin had categorized posts into folders by room layout, timestamps, even lighting direction. One series focused solely on the background of her kitchen, appliance type, drawer handles, counter material. That's how he narrowed her building from dozens in the region. From there, he used reverse image search to identify similar units listed on rental sites. Interior photos matched her videos, flooring type, cabinet texture, vent placement. That led him to the Cortland apartments. The case file includes this note from a digital forensics agent. He never needed her permission. He only needed her content. Even the platforms she didn't post regularly on, Snapchat, Twitter, were monitored. Kevin had saved entire threads from people discussing her. He cross-referenced usernames that commented under her posts across multiple platforms. When two usernames matched, he noted it. When locations repeated, he logged them. The most chilling discovery came from a text document in his iCloud backup, last edited 2 weeks before the homicide. If she saw how much I know, she'd stop hiding it. This wasn't a case of someone losing control in a moment of rage. This was constructed fantasy, reinforced every time he scrolled, favorited, saved, or rewatched. And like many digital fixations, it escalated quietly. There were no alarms until the last move had already been made. Detectives reviewing Janai's own phone confirmed she had no contact with Kevin Accordo, no replies, no private messages. He wasn't in her blocked list. She never acknowledged him. She likely never knew his name. He didn't exist in her world, but she had become the center of his. In the broader context of online stalking, the case didn't break new ground, but it highlighted the structural problem investigators had been warning about for years. Content availability without content boundaries. Janie hadn't posted anything reckless. She didn't overshare. She blurred addresses, avoided tagging locations in real time, and never discussed her schedule publicly. She did everything right. And still she was found. By the end of the third day of analysis, the digital forensic report exceeded 150 pages. The FBI's cybercrime unit flagged it as a priority example of behavioral risk escalation, how passive tracking can become physical targeting without any of the traditional warning signs. No prior confrontation, no violent language, just a man watching a woman who didn't know he existed until he showed up at her door. The suspect had a name, but what investigators were trying to define now was something less visible: his mental framework, his behavior, his thought patterns, his logic, if any, because nothing at the scene pointed to impulse. What happened wasn't chaos. It was structured, tracked, executed with intention. When Kevin Accordo's body was examined at the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences, the self-inflicted wounds were consistent with delayed suicidal attempts, not immediate, not desperate. The hesitation cuts on his wrists and the angles of the deeper punctures to his chest and neck suggested someone who had time to deliberate. Toxicology came back clean. No alcohol, no narcotics, no prescriptions. But there were indicators that suggested a psychological break: irregular handwriting on the walls, obsessive writing patterns in the notebook, and extreme fixation on a single subject without variation over time. That subject was Janai Gagné. The forensic psychology unit from the FBI's Houston field office was brought in for a consult. Their assessment wasn't speculative. It was clinical, based on digital records, travel patterns, writing samples, and lack of personal relationships. Kevin's behavior aligned with a rare but documented condition: primary erotomania. In simple terms, it's a delusional belief that another person, typically someone of higher status or visibility, is in love with the affected individual. The subject builds a reality where romantic cues are imagined, messages are interpreted through a distorted lens, and perceived rejection only fuels conviction. This wasn't the first time the Bureau had seen it, but most cases never escalate beyond online harassment or intrusive behavior. Physical contact is rare, violence even rarer. In Kevin's case, however, the delusion had evolved into mission logic. Investigators reviewed his written material in depth. The language shifted over time. Earlier entries were hopeful, phrases like, "she'll know soon," or "they're keeping her from me." As months passed, the tone hardened. "She won't say it, but I can see it," eventually became, "she's choosing to ignore me." 3 weeks before his trip to Texas, his notes took on a finality. Words like inevitable, deserve, and prove began to appear. The last page in the notebook, recovered from his car, simply read, "If they won't let her speak, I'll be the one who ends the silence." There was no signature, no date. Janai's family was also interviewed as part of the psychological profile. No prior stalking incidents, no restraining orders, no signs that she had felt directly threatened. One friend mentioned a vague sense of unease, packages without names, messages from unknown numbers, but nothing actionable. That aligned with what investigators had feared. Kevin had managed to stay under the radar. That silence is what worried one profiler the most. We can detect threats that speak, but delusion is quiet until it's not. In Kevin's online activity, there were no signs of broader instability, No manifesto, no extremist ideology, no active participation in violent forums or incel communities. He didn't post rants. He didn't reply aggressively to strangers. His behavior online was passive. He watched, collected, and archived. His entire psychological ecosystem revolved around Janay's digital existence. Her photos, her expressions, her silence. He interpreted everything as coded dialogue. Investigators found messages in his drafts folder addressed to her, hundreds of them, none sent. The illusion in his mind didn't require confirmation, it just needed time. The FBI's final profile referred to Kevin as exhibiting concrete delusional ideation with latent possessive tendencies. It's clinical terminology, but the implication is human. He believed she was his, even if she never met him, spoke to him, or acknowledged him. And he didn't act on hate, he acted on belief. There's a crucial difference between obsession and delusion. Obsession is loud. It shows up in inboxes, at front doors, in comments. Delusion is different. It justifies itself without confrontation. And in cases like this, it can exist for years without the victim knowing they're being watched, analyzed, and ultimately targeted. In towns like Richmond, murders aren't just crimes. They interrupt the very idea of safety, especially when they come without warning. That's what made this case difficult to absorb, not because it was random, but because it was untraceable until the final act. In high-security complexes like Cortlandt Apartments, entry is supposed to be straightforward. Swipe access, visitor logs, vehicle tags, cameras mounted at every main entry point. The layout was designed for privacy and safety, but on the weekend of August 28, 2021, none of it stopped Kevin Accordo. That fact alone shifted the investigation into procedural territory. If a man with no keys, no appointment, and no known connection to any resident could enter unnoticed and stay inside for over 24 hours, it wasn't just a personal tragedy. It was a systems failure. Investigators started with access control data. Janay's apartment door had a smart lock synced to her phone. The last recorded lock event was at 8:12 p.m. on August 27th when she entered her unit. There was no unlock signal from the app afterward, no remote activity. Her phone showed no unusual access attempts. That meant the door was secured. If Kevin got in, it either happened before she returned home or someone else unknowingly facilitated his entry into the building. The evidence pointed toward the latter. Footage from the gated entrance on West Point Drive revealed a vehicle, a black Dodge Charger with Florida plates, tailgating a resident's car at 4:07 a.m. on August 28th. The time matched the GPS logs pulled from Kevin's rental vehicle. The gate stayed open for 7 seconds longer than standard due to a double-entry override, a software quirk known to maintenance staff but not widely disclosed. He used that opening to enter. From there, the Charger parked in an unassigned visitor spot near Building 5, where Janay lived. He exited with a small black duffel bag. No one confronted him. No one called security. The lot was dark. There were no posted security guards during that overnight shift. There was no external camera facing the stairwell that led to her unit. This gap in coverage wasn't unusual. Many complexes prioritize entry points, not internal walkways. But it meant investigators had no footage of Kevin approaching her door. However, 2 witnesses from neighboring units confirmed something unusual. They'd seen a man, unfamiliar, white male, mid-30s, sitting on the stairs the night before the homicide. He didn't say anything, didn't knock, just sat. One resident thought he might be an Uber driver waiting for a late pickup. Those statements were time-stamped near 2:00 a.m. on August 29th. That left nearly 36 hours where Kevin could have remained inside the building, unseen. The next forensic angle was doorframe analysis. Crime scene investigators used alternate light sources and powder trace to check for tool marks. The results were negative: no forced entry, no lock tampering, no signs of picking. Janay's father told officers that he had to kick in the door to get inside, confirming it was indeed locked from the inside when he arrived. Conclusion: Kevin was already inside the unit by the time she died. He was either led in, followed her in, or hid until she returned. All 3 possibilities were now under equal consideration. Inside the apartment, nothing was stolen, nothing broken. Her purse, keys, phone, and laptop were all untouched. The refrigerator had 1 bottle of water removed. Both drinking glasses in the sink had fingerprints, hers on one, his on the other. DNA swabs matched. That single detail raised a disturbing probability. Kevin may have shared a drink with her while she was still alive. Whether by coercion or deception, it changed the timeline and her possible awareness of his presence. The lack of disturbance pointed away from a struggle. No furniture displaced, no signs of forced control, but the pattern of blood on the upstairs carpet and the depression in the couch cushion suggested he spent several hours moving between levels after her death. That alone reframed the emotional scope of the case. He didn't just kill, he stayed. The apartment's HVAC logs also contributed. Janie had a smart thermostat synced to her phone. Data retrieved by digital forensics showed a temperature adjustment at 3:24 a.m. on August 29th, a full 24 hours after her likely time of death. Janie's phone was inactive by then. Only one person could have made that change. Kevin had remained in the unit long enough to manually adjust the room temperature, possibly to slow decomposition, possibly to delay smell, possibly because he planned to stay longer. Finally, the front door's interior deadbolt was found in the locked position. That could only be engaged from the inside, suggesting again that Kevin either never left after entry or re-secured it manually. The time window matched forensic estimates. Janie was killed late on the 28th or early on the 29th. Kevin died hours later on the 29th. The entire apartment complex was notified during the investigation. Management admitted that their visitor system had no facial recognition, no real-time monitoring. The gate camera only stored footage for 48 hours unless flagged. If Janie's father had arrived a day later, there might have been no record of how Kevin entered at all. Security gaps aren't unique to this case, but when layered with digital obsession, they create blind spots, areas where violence can emerge without warning. As one investigator noted in their report, the door wasn't the failure. The system was. Every system around her assumed safety because the threat didn't make noise. You think you know someone because of their followers, but followers aren't friends. Popularity isn't protection. And what happened to Janie Gagne, known online as Mercedes Moore, shows exactly how little fame matters once the threat is already inside your life. Let's reset the focus. Janie didn't live recklessly. She wasn't careless. She followed protocol. Her doors were locked. Her social media accounts were private when she wanted them to be, and she avoided publicizing real-time locations. She even maintained separate profiles, one for family, one for the brand, and one, tightly restricted, for actual friends. Yet despite that caution, the threat still found her. The deeper investigators looked into Janie's digital life, the clearer it became. Kevin Accordo wasn't some random stranger. He'd been watching her for months. Data from her primary Instagram account showed that Kevin had liked or interacted with over 150 of her posts between May and August 2021. He had never received a response, not a single comment from her, no DM exchange, nothing. He had followed her through 2 different accounts, both with low activity and mismatched profile details. One traced back to a Fort Lauderdale IP. The other was linked to a mobile hotspot connected to his personal device. This wasn't casual fandom. It was targeted. Janie had blocked one of Kevin's accounts in July 2021. The block wasn't flagged at the time. It wasn't aggressive or hostile. Just another generic profile removed like many others. But for Kevin, it appears that act marked a turning point. Search histories recovered from his devices revealed increasingly obsessive queries after the block. Mercedes Moore real address, how to find someone's location from Instagram, Houston apartment model influencers. He wasn't just consuming content anymore. He was trying to bridge the gap between digital and real-world access. This is where privacy eroded. Investigators believe Kevin likely discovered Janie's location through metadata or third-party leaks, not her direct posts. One of her tagged photos from early August showed her posing on her balcony. The angle revealed a partial complex logo on a nearby building, visible only from one section of Cortland Apartments. Combined with a tagged local restaurant and a visible skyline sliver, the clues were enough. This triangulation wasn't accidental. Kevin had mapped it out. And yet, Janie's life wasn't reckless or overshared. Her phone records show she was texting a friend about switching apartments just a week before her death. She had expressed concern about being watched or someone lingering near the lot. It was dismissed at the time, just the price of being recognizable. But it wasn't just paranoia. She was noticing him. One of Janie's neighbors, a female resident 2 doors down, Later told investigators she'd seen a man matching Kevin's description standing near the complex mailboxes on multiple occasions in August. He never retrieved anything, never used a key, just lingered, then walked toward the parking lot and disappeared. No one reported it, not once. What this reveals is painful but critical. Janae did nearly everything right. She didn't invite contact. She didn't engage with unknown followers. She avoided live streaming at home. She kept her personal and professional lives separate. But even full awareness wasn't enough to stop someone determined to cross that line. The autopsy confirmed Janae had died from manual strangulation with evidence of blunt force trauma. Defensive wounds were minimal, supporting the theory that she was surprised or overpowered quickly. Toxicology reports showed no substances in her system. She wasn't impaired, she wasn't out of control, she didn't let her guard down. In short, she wasn't careless, she was hunted. Some observers tried at the time to draw parallels between her online persona and the crime. That false causation, blaming the victim's career, appearance, or confidence, is not just intellectually dishonest, it's dangerous. As lead investigator Sergeant UK Rowland later stated, "Nothing about her public presence caused this. She didn't provoke it. The pathology was on his side." The evidence supports that fully. Digital forensics further revealed a disturbing cache on Kevin's devices, dozens of screenshots of Janae's images, captions saved to a notes app, and fragments of what appeared to be imagined conversations. He wasn't just watching. He was constructing an alternate reality around her. And when that imagined version of her didn't respond, he crossed the line into physical proximity. Then violence. Before Janae Gagne ever heard the name Kevin Alexander Accordo, he had already constructed a version of her that never existed. Not the real woman behind the screen, but a figure in his mind, curated, idealized, and completely detached from reality. What investigators uncovered about Kevin in the weeks after the murder painted a clear profile, not just of an obsessed man, but of one whose instability had long gone unchecked. Let's start with the knowns. Kevin was born in 1988 and resided in Florida. He had no prior criminal record, no arrests, no known history of violence. He lived with his parents in a suburban neighborhood outside Fort Lauderdale. According to neighbors, he kept to himself. No job on file for the last year, no major financial activity, no active driver's license in recent months. The digital trail told a different story. Kevin's browsing history showed a sharp uptick in celebrity-related content beginning in late 2020. He wasn't just passively viewing content. He was fixated on models, influencers, women in the fitness and entertainment industry. One constant stood out. He lingered longest on content that blurred the line between professional and personal. Instagram models, live QAs, fan-accessible platforms. And it was through Instagram that he discovered Janae. Investigators reviewing Kevin's devices found more than casual interest. A local forensic lab recovered data fragments from a custom-built spreadsheet on his laptop. Titled Janae Interaction Log, it recorded timestamps for her social media posts, changes in her follower count, the tone of her captions, and which emojis she used. It included speculative entries, guesses about her mood or relationship status. These weren't just notes. They were part of a constructed belief system. The timeline gets tighter here. In April 2021, Kevin's searches shift from general admiration to location tracking. Houston modeling agencies, Sugarland Apartments influencer, how to find someone without their number. Then in June, encrypted messaging apps were downloaded. Tor browser activity increased, and by August his phone had been pinging cell towers in Texas. There was no business, no hotel bookings, no communication with friends or family explaining the trip. Kevin was traveling for one reason, to find Janae. His journal, found in the rental car parked outside Janae's apartment, offers more insight into mental state than motive. The writing is fragmented, erratic. Some pages are dated, others aren't. The entries swing from infatuation to rage. Phrases like, "I made her, she belongs to no one else, and if I can't have her, no one will," appear repeatedly, scrawled in ink that changes from blue to red to black. Mental health professionals consulted during the case review pointed to signs of delusional attachment, a form of obsessive behavior rooted in unreciprocated belief of personal connection, not just parasocial behavior. Delusion. Kevin's family cooperated with law enforcement. His parents allowed a full search of their home. They were devastated but not shocked. His father confirmed that Kevin had withdrawn socially after losing his job in late 2020. He spent increasing hours online. His mother noted several deliveries, tech equipment, recording gear, and maps that he refused to explain. When asked if they suspected he was stalking anyone, they denied it, but they admitted he wasn't well. Still, there was no reported psychiatric history, no active medication, no wellness checks. And that's where this case stretches into systemic failure. When a person exhibits digital obsession, where's the threshold between freedom and threat? Kevin didn't post threats. He didn't harass Jani directly. He didn't break laws until he crossed her threshold. But the progression wasn't hidden. It was logged, time-stamped, and archived. Had there been a reporting channel or digital flagging system, his behaviors might have raised alerts before it reached a physical encounter, yet no intervention came. There's a pattern in cases like this. Isolated males with declining stability, consuming fantasy-based content online, and forming imagined relationships with public figures. The target doesn't even need to respond. In fact, the silence often accelerates the obsession. Every unreciprocated post becomes a canvas for fantasy and eventually resentment. By the time Kevin stood in front of Jani's apartment door, he wasn't acting as a stranger. In his mind, he had been part of her life for a long time. Digital forensics from his phone revealed audio recordings, monologues. Kevin spoke to himself, rehearsing conversations, justifying his travel, his anger, his entitlement. He referred to her as my girl. One recording ends with the words, "She was mine before she knew it, and she'll never leave me again." That audio was dated August 27, 2021, the day before her body was found. The final report was conclusive. Jani Edmondson had been killed in her home, struck repeatedly, with visible signs of a struggle. Kevin Woolery was found dead by suicide in a nearby room. No forced entry, no third party. The timeline matched surveillance gaps and digital records exactly. Inside Kevin's device, police found folders filled with screenshots of Jani's live streams, addresses, and imagined messages. He had studied her movements for months. There were no previous charges, no reported threats, nothing in the system that could have flagged him. But the intent was there, carefully built online, quietly executed offline. The autopsy confirmed the horror. Multiple head injuries, defensive wounds, but no sexual assault. The motive wasn't lust, it was control, rooted in a delusion that she belonged to him. News broke fast. Headlines framed it as a stalker case, a warning about influencer culture. But the family didn't care about headlines. They buried a daughter. A sister, a 23-year-old woman who shared her voice and got silence in return. This case wasn't about fame, it was about access, about how public visibility, without safeguards, invites private danger. And that's the real takeaway. Not to blame Jani, but to protect others like her. Every post, every tag, every location shared in real time, it adds up. And someone, somewhere, might be watching. We close the file with no redemption arc, just a digital trail, a ruined home, and a system not fast enough to see the threat coming. I've told this story not just to report a tragedy, but to remind us of something deeper. In a world where we share everything, we often forget who's watching. If you've ever posted your location or shared your life online, ask yourself, how much is too much? We owe it to ourselves and to each other to be more mindful, more cautious, and more connected in real life. If this video moved you or made you think, leave a comment with where you're watching from or share your thoughts below. And if it didn't land with you, let me know why. I want to hear from all sides. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next one. Your support means everything.